In this lesson, we'll work on some additional details for the shoes our game character is wearing. Alright, great. So this is where we're kind of at right now. I've got kind of this base texture down for both the leather areas as well as the soles. Now, in looking at this, I tend to work with the rest of the geometry hidden, but I think that it's a good idea to evaluate the color of these to go ahead and show the rest of this. Because in looking at this, I feel like that leather is, one, it's too saturated, and two, it's not dark enough. It's not believably dark. So before we begin working on some additional details, I want to go ahead and color correct this. So let me go ahead and sort of undo back a few times, and let's go ahead and just kind of come in here and select our base layer. Now again, we could come in here and attach an adjustment layer to this. We can either create an adjustment layer, and let's just say we go with something like hue, saturation, lightness. Now again, that's going to correct everything underneath here if we begin making changes with just a simple adjustment layer. So I would recommend using an adjustment stack to affect just this layer. Just like so. You'll get this little icon here, and we can go ahead and tap on that. Then that little pin icon to snap it into place, and you can see we have our own layer stack completely dedicated to the adjustments for this base layer. So let me just go ahead and kind of drag that to the side a little bit so we can see exactly what we're doing. We'll go ahead and select the HSL layer there, and let's come in here, and the first thing I want to do is adjust the saturation a little bit. So I'm going to just drop that down some. We'll go to maybe 0.9. And let's go ahead and affect the lightness as well. So I'll just drag that down. Now I want them to be rather dark, so I want to come down to about 0.5 or so. Something like that. Now I also feel like the color is rather warm, and I want to begin to kind of shift that a little bit. You can see here I can shift it this way and it goes into sort of a purplish color, but if I go to the right a little bit, we can actually get it to kind of a more of a yellowish brown, which I think that's looking pretty good at this point. So I may actually even go a little bit darker. There we go. That's looking really much more like a boot. So we're still able to keep a lot of that texture that was really nice about that particular texture that we used in the previous lesson. But let me just go ahead and unpin that and close that adjustment stack out. So really starting to like those colors now. So let's go ahead and jump back up here to our detail paint layer, and let's start to work on some of these details. So the first thing I want to focus on is kind of the laces here. You can see if we zoom in rather close, let me just go ahead and focus just on this shoe for right now. I'll go ahead and select it, hide the unselected, so now we're not working with both shoes. So you can see here there are indeed some laces that are part of that normal map, and I'd like to come in here and maybe work on painting those in, at least giving them sort of a diffuse color. So I'll hold down the C key with my paint tool selected and just sample maybe that yellow color that we used. It'd be a nice color to kind of incorporate for the laces, I think. And again, I'm just using my default brush with the alpha component turned off here. And now there are some, it's kind of hard to see at this resolution, but there are some eyelets that are sculpted into the normal map here. So we can kind of use those as a basis and just start to kind of pull in some laces across here. So we'll just kind of use the sculpted detail as a reference. And I'm just going to come in here sort of like that. And we'll bring in another lace. Kind of trying to stick to sort of a traditional lacing pattern here as well. So let me grab my eraser, switch it over to maybe one of these hard 100 brushes so I can come in and erase away. Come in and erase this guy right here. Notice I'm painting all this without baking it down. So we'll come in and pull another lace in there, one in here. And let's go ahead and pull some in over here. Again, keeping those eyelets kind of in focus here. Now, without looking at the high resolution geometry for this model, it's kind of difficult to tell based on this normal map exactly where those laces were. But you know what? It's not important for that low resolution game mesh. So it's just important that these look believable when they're painted. So let's come over here and kind of touch up some of these areas around the eyelets. Maybe there's an eyelet there, maybe one up here. We'll come in, and we can also use the clear blend mode, or clear painting mode rather, and we'll just switch to that. Just sort of paint some of this back here. And let's see, I'm going to come in and paint this back a bit. So I'm assuming that goes under there. Just kind of starting to define where these laces are originating from and where they're traveling to here. So I think we could probably pull that back a bit. Come back over here to our normal painting mode, and we'll just come in and refine these a bit more. All right, I think those are looking pretty good for right now. So we'll go ahead and run with that. Now, when it comes to making these believable, we need to kind of add a little bit more than just this color, this single color for the laces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and hold the J key to bring up my color pop-up. And I'm going to go ahead and grab sort of a real dark, almost a shadow color. So we're going to basically end up painting kind of essentially some ambient occlusion for these laces. Now that's not dark enough to really show up, so I want to go ahead and make it even a bit darker here. So there we go. So we want to just basically run this paint right next to these laces so that it appears that they're casting a bit of a shadow. Just like so. Now we don't need to get too fancy in terms of like blending this shadow or anything like that. It's just it's not going to be seen at the resolution that we're painting at. So we're just going to come in and basically run kind of a bead of paint underneath each one of these laces. I'm trying to do that without covering up the lighter yellow diffuse color. And we'll come in kind of right there, and lastly right in there. If we need to, we can come in and touch up a little bit over here and over here, but ultimately it's probably going to be less apparent where it's tied up against this edge of leather. So that's starting to look pretty good. Now I might come in and basically come in with a highlight color at this point. So if I sample that yellow color we started with, I could come in and maybe brighten that up quite a bit. For this, I'll turn my alpha back on. And we can just kind of run a little bit of a highlight over certain areas of the laces. Maybe we want the center to have kind of the brunt of that highlight. And you can kind of see how that's helping to make those laces pop just a little bit. So those laces are looking pretty good. Now we don't want to forget about the eyelets here as well. So now the eyelets, again, they're just basically little metal rings that the laces loop through here. So again, we could come in and choose kind of a color. Let's just basically maybe grab a little bit warmer, kind of a neutral color here. Turn off my alpha component. Let's see what that looks like. I don't think that that's dark enough, so we'll come in with a little darker color. Maybe these are actually kind of the same color as the soles themselves, so we'll just make them really, really dark. Sort of like that. Again, it's kind of difficult to see at this resolution. I am zoomed in really, really close on this geometry, but that's okay. We'll just go ahead and paint these in just like so and bake them down. You can see how I'm kind of avoiding painting over the laces that I've already painted in. So we'll come in here and let's go ahead and drop one in here. Come in here and drop one in. Now you probably want to make sure that these are fairly evenly spaced out. We want the boot to look fairly natural. So we'll come in and kind of look at that after the fact, and I may need to adjust the position of some of these eyelets. So you can kind of see these right here don't line up really, really well, but I think that they'll serve the purpose that we need. So as far as other details that we can begin to paint here, the next thing I want to focus on is kind of some scratches. So let's go ahead and just create a new paint layer here. Just title it Scratches. Now for the scratches, again, we're going to basically use one of the brushes included with Mari, but I've gone ahead and saved that over here inside our project shelf. Remember, we imported that earlier in this course. It's this brush right here. I kind of like this brush for doing any kind of scuffs or scratches, especially on leather. So we'll come in and select that. Notice that the alpha and the flow component are checked here. And let's go ahead and maybe start with kind of that yellow color. And then we'll bring up our color pop-up. We didn't really sample that yellow. Let me grab it from up here. There we go. And I'll come in here and just desaturate that and brighten it up quite a bit here. So basically at this point, that's really, really opaque. I'm going to actually drop the opacity down so we can really build this up kind of slow. And we might even adjust the spacing on this a little bit as well. I'm going to bring the color up, make it a little bit lighter. There we go. That's starting to look like some believable scuffs. So if we go ahead and bake that down, we'll just kind of start to think about areas where these boots would naturally receive wear. The toe is probably one of the most common areas where this type of wear is picked up. But if you think about it, you know, we could even use this same brush down in and around the laces here, because those laces are going to rub this leather edge. So we can come in and start to kind of scuff that up right around in here, just like so. We may need to come in and paint with a clear blend mode, or clear painting mode rather, to maybe pull some of these scratches off the laces if we get in places that we don't want them. But you can see even some details here that we can start to kind of bring some scuffs in. Really kind of starting to layer these boots together. Kind of highlighting the different surfaces where this type of wear would be received. We might even have some up here on kind of the edge of the tongue where it's been pulled on as the shoe's been put on. So you can see how that's really already adding a lot of character to these shoes. Now don't over scratch them. You may need to come in and switch your painting mode to clear and kind of paint that back with this same brush tip. But rather think about some of the areas where these boots are going to receive this type of wear as you're painting it. So in this lesson we've begun to add some additional detail to our shoes here. I'm going to go ahead and carry this detail through both of the shoes. I'll go ahead and paint the other set of laces and add in some more scratches. But in the next lesson we're going to put some finishing touches on our character's shoes. So I'll see you there.